Shalom, my name is Lipkin. Welcome. We're going to tour today a very, very special site, very important in the Bible. We are in ancient Shiloh today, and I have a guest that's going to join me. His name is Zach Waller. I invite you to come with us and tour this amazing place. Zach, good morning.
Hey Aaron, good to be with you again.
How are you?
Doing great. It's amazing to be right here where the Tabernacle stood in Shiloh.
Yes. The Tabernacle was here, the story of Samuel, Joshua, the feasts and Messiah. There's so much to this place to talk about, but we'll get to that. Let's start the tour.
All right, sounds good. That we're here in Shiloh. How do we know for sure that this is actually the site?
I mean, after 3,000 years, you would expect names to change and not to stay the same. And it would be hard to find a place that was 3,000 years ago, that existed 3,000 years ago. Well, first of all, we know that this is the area of the tribe of Ephraim. We know the borders of the tribe, so we know that Shiloh was a city in the tribe of Ephraim.
There have been a lot of different cities and towns inside the territory of Ephraim. How do we know that this particular one is Shiloh?
Well, there's a very interesting phenomenon, a historical phenomenon that repeats itself all over the land of Israel, and that is the conservation of the names, the historical names, the biblical names of the places. The names haven't changed for thousands of years. And so today when you come to Israel and you're looking for the places that are mentioned in the Bible, you only need to listen to the names, and that way you can find them. And when you come here to this place, the Arabs around us call this place Khirbet Sailun. Sailun and Shiloh are very, very similar. So that's really a very good indication that this is Shiloh. But we have even a stronger evidence that this is Shiloh. The only place in the Bible where you have a GPS biblical pinpoint of a location is Shiloh, actually. And when you open the book of Judges, chapter 21, there is a story of the concubine, and there is a feast that is happening in Shiloh, and we read that there is a feast of the Lord from year to year in Shiloh, which is on the north side of Bethel. And we are to the north of Bethel, about a half an hour drive, so check, we are north of Bethel. On the east side of the highway that goes up from Bethel to Shechem, and we are indeed on the east side of the Patriarch's Road that led from Bethel to Shechem. And last but not least, south side of Lebonah. Lebonah is a Jewish village, a biblical Jewish village. And again, we're looking for an Arab village that has the same name. And we have an Arab village about a 5-minute drive from here called Luban. Luban preserves the name Levona. And so we have very, very clear directions how to get to Shiloh.
So is that an exception for the Bible to be so clear about exactly where the location is, or is that pretty normal in the Bible to point out a place so exactly?
It's very rare. And it actually brings a very interesting point. We know that the tabernacle stood in Shiloh. And so why is there a need to give an exact pinpoint location of Shiloh if this is a place that everybody knows about? When do I tell you how to get to a certain place when you don't know how to get there? And so Shiloh apparently at that time was not an important place, and maybe even the tabernacle wasn't here at that time, during the story of the concubine. There's another evidence that I'm going to talk about later on that really clearly says that this is Shiloh, but we'll get to that later on. I want to talk to you a bit about the story that is connected to this GPS pinpoint location. Let's go to the next spot.
All right, sounds good.
In the Bible, we have a number of verses that talk about vineyards that are being grown in Samaria. In Jeremiah, for example, vines will be planted in the mountains of Samaria. And because of that, we find a lot of ancient wineries all over Samaria. And Shiloh has a couple of wineries. We are right now in such a winery. Now, why am I bringing you here? Why is wine so important? Because one of the first stories in the Bible that speak about Shiloh has a connection to wine and grapes. That is the story of the concubine in the book of Judges. At the end of the book of Judges, we have a terrible story, a story of a civil war that is caused because of a terrible deed that was done to a concubine of an Ephraimite. During that civil war, the tribes vow that they will not give their girls as wives to the tribe of Benjamin. Later on, they understand that that vow is a destructive vow because it basically eradicates and terminates the tribe of Benjamin. A tribe from Israel is going to be eradicated. And eventually, the tribes understand that and they try to find a way how to break that vow, how to go around it. And we read in the book of Judges at the end that they recall that there is a holiday, some sort of a holiday, which is called the Feast of the Lord in Shiloh. Okay? Now, as a kid, when I read that, I always thought it's Passover or Tabernacles or Pentecost. But our tradition, the Jewish tradition, says that that holiday is actually a day in the middle of the 11th month in the Hebrew year, the month of Av. A mysterious celebration. And we know that this celebration is happening in the middle of this month. And today in Israel, we celebrate it as the Day of Love. But at that time, we read that the girls of Shiloh would go out to the vineyards and dance. So what is this special feast? Let's go back a step and look at the other feasts. We have 3 major feasts. Each feast has a historical importance, and also it has an agricultural importance. For instance, Passover, what's the historical importance?
The Exodus from Egypt.
The Exodus from Egypt. And the agricultural crop that's connected to it is barley. The harvest of the barley, that's the time during the year. Pentecost or Shavuot is the celebration of the receiving of the Torah, the receiving of the Bible on Mount Sinai, but it's also the harvest of the wheat. The third feast is the Feast of Tabernacles. Historically, it commemorates the wandering in the desert. That's why we are in the Sukkah, in the tabernacle during the feast. But it also commemorates the harvest of the olives. There is one historical event that doesn't have a feast, and there is one crop that doesn't have a feast. The crop is grapes, one of the major crops of the land of Israel. When Israel is described, it's described as the land of olive oil, grape juice, and of wheat. And we don't have the grapes, we don't have the holiday of the grapes. And the historical event, which is the major historical event, is the entrance of the Israelites to the land. It's, so to say, the Independence Day of the land of Israel. And it is believed by Bible scholars that the 15th of Av combined those 2 missing factors. The 15th of Av celebrated the harvest of the grapes, and indeed we have the girls of Shiloh dancing at the vineyards. So they're celebrating the harvest of the grapes and the land of Israel. 7 days before the 15th of Av is the 9th of Av. It's a day of mourning. It's a bad day in our tradition. But it's also said to be the day that the spies came back to the Israelites saying, this land is good, but we can't fight the Canaanites. We can't go in there. Imagine if the spies said, the land is good, we can do it, let's go in. What we would have is a celebration of 7 days between the 9th of Av and the 15th of Av, just like in Sukkot, the first holiday, the second holiday, we have a week. Passover, we have the first day and the last day, we have a week. This could have been the feast of the land of Israel, the feast of the grapes. It is not commanded in the Bible for the Israelites to do, but rather it is a feast that the Israelites decide to do in thankfulness to God for the land of Israel, and for the grapes, and for the end of the summer season.
So it's like the Israeli equivalent of Thanksgiving in the States.
Yes,
Something
yes,
like that.
yes, yes. Also, we celebrate Independence Day in Israel. This is not a holiday that was said in the Bible. It's something that we made to commemorate the Day of Independence, during which we thank God for the establishment of the State of Israel. And so we have an ancient holiday that is mentioned in the book of Judges, and it's also mentioned in correlation with two words in Hebrew that are special and are always mentioned in connection to this feast. And that is the feast of the Lord in Shiloh, Miyamim Yemima in Hebrew, which means an ancient holiday, but it's a very special combination of words. And it also appears later on in the story of Samuel, and we'll get to that. And so we have a fourth feast, a feast that maybe is a forgotten feast, but now that we're coming back to the land and we're reconnecting to the land, we see the grapes growing. We feel the need to celebrate and thank God for the grapes, for the grape juice. And now we literally physically are here to feel when it's happening and to celebrate it on the 15th of Av. And the 15th of Av, during the time of the concubine, the story of the concubine, became a day of love. It became a day of unification between the tribe of Benjamin and the rest of the tribes of Israel. And so it's a very, very special day, a day of happiness, a day of joy. And today we see the vines around us growing again, just like Jeremiah said, that they will yet plant vines in the mountains of Samaria. And today in Shiloh, every year on the 15th of Av, there is a celebration of dancing only for women here to commemorate the biblical story of the girls of Shiloh dancing in the vineyards.
Wow.
So if you ever come here with your wife, tell your wife to come here and celebrate with some dancing.
Sounds great. It's amazing to be alive in this time when we see all the restorative things happening, and like not only the grapes growing, but the people here, like you said, to be able to dance in Shiloh again.
Right. We are now in a Byzantine church. This is one church out of 4 churches that was found here in Shiloh. And you see that there's a concentration of churches, many, many churches in one place, which is very rare, and we will talk about that later on. But the reason why we're here is because of this model of the tabernacle. We know that the tabernacle stood here for almost 400 years, as the Jewish tradition says. And we read that Joshua and the Israelites brought the tabernacle to Shiloh. We read it in Joshua 18. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel assembled themselves together at Shiloh and set up the tent of meeting there, and the land was subdued before them. So from that point on, after the tabernacle was brought here, Shiloh became the capital of the United Kingdom of the Israelites. And it wasn't only a political capital, it was also a religious capital. The tabernacle was here, the high priest was here, and this is where all the tribes would convene in the different feasts and the different events, the national events that happened there. We also read that here is where Joshua spoke to the tribes and divided the land between them in the book of Joshua. And Joshua cast lots for them in Shiloh before the Lord. And there Joshua divided the land unto the children of Israel according to their divisions. And so the division of the land of Israel between the tribes was also done here with lots, basically telling God, you made the decision which land belongs to which tribe. So this is a very, very important place with the reconnection to the land of the Israelites. But I believe that the biggest story, the most important story of this place of Shiloh is the story of the birth of Samuel. We read in the first chapter of the book of Samuel that a person called Elkanah from the mountain of Ephraim comes here every year, once a year, And again, when does he come? I always thought that he comes during the three feasts, Tabernacles, Passover, or Pentecost. But we read that he's coming on the feast of the Lord of Yemim Yemima, the ancient feast of the Lord. And we spoke about that at the winery, about the 15th of Av. Again, the holiday, the feast of the Lord from Yemim Yemima. This is the time that Elkanah comes here, and he comes here with his family, with his two wives, Penina, who has children, and Hannah, who does not bear any children. And Hannah is sad. She cannot celebrate, she cannot be joyful with her family when she cannot bear children. And she makes a bold decision to come to the tabernacle, to come and pray to God, ask God to give her a child. And she stands there, moving her lips. And the high priest is seeing her and he's saying, "What are you doing? Are you drunk?" And this is an interesting question because, you would expect him to say, "Wow, this is a righteous woman praying to God, talking to God." But we see that praying to God was not something that you do that time at the tabernacle. You come to the tabernacle to sacrifice to God, to bring whole offerings, cows, sheep. But here, we have a woman moving her lips praying to God. This was something new, something that the high priest was not used to. And what is Hannah saying? Hannah is saying, "God, give me a child, and I vow to give this child to the tabernacle, to your service." And the high priest comes to her and says, "What are you doing?" She says, "I'm praying to God. I'm sad, I'm really sad." And he says, "Don't worry, God will give you what you requested." She goes back home, she becomes pregnant, and she brings Samuel to the world. Samuel is being brought here after growing up, and she comes to Eli, the high priest, and she says, "This is the boy that I was waiting for. And I'm bringing him here because he is in your custody now. He is to service God at the tabernacle." And Samuel is sleeping near the tabernacle, and one night he hears God talking to him. And we read that the prophecy, that God's word at that time was very rare. And that's why it's very important that suddenly prophecy is coming back. And God is telling Samuel, "I'm going to kill the sons of Eli, the high priest, because they're behaving badly, they're behaving immorally." Samuel wakes up in the morning, he gives that prophecy to Eli, and that brings us back to the story, to the biblical story of the battle with the Philistines. And this terrible story is happening where?
Right here in Shiloh.
Right here in Shiloh. Can you imagine Samuel hearing God's voice right here where we are right now? This is where prophecy was given to Samuel. This is his inauguration as a prophet. And Samuel later on becomes the beacon of light for the Israelites in a very, very hard period when the Philistines are attacking, and when there is the process of shift from the period of the judges to the period of King Saul and King David. Samuel is the bridge. Samuel is the rock that Israel stands on. Samuel is the visionary of this period that we're talking about. And so this is a very, very important site and a very, very important place.
So is all this, the whole thing, the tabernacle, or just the inner golden structure?
The tabernacle is the inner golden structure. It's divided into two areas, the Holy and the Holy of Holies. And in the Holy of Holies is the most important artifact in this whole area, which is the Ark of the Covenant with the tablets of Moses inside. So that's the tabernacle. Outside of the tabernacle, we have the courtyard, which surrounds the tabernacle. And please remember this shape because you will see it later on in another location. And inside the courtyard, you have the whole offering altar and the sink to wash the hands and legs of the high priests. The big question is where the tabernacle stood. And there are a number of locations that Bible scholars believe might be the place where the tabernacle stood. One of those places is the building that we see to our right. What you see is a mosque from the Arab period. It's called the Mosque of the Orphan. Jamia El Yatim. Why orphan? It's a question, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But you see that this mosque is actually located on top of much more ancient remains.
Wow, so is that a mosaic down there?
Yes, it's a beautiful mosaic. You want to see a 2,000-year-old mosaic?
Sure.
We're standing on an ancient mosaic from 2,000 years ago, approximately 1,800 years ago. This is from the late Roman period. Isn't this amazing? Look at this.
It is really amazing, but it's a little bit hard to really tell the colors. It's kind of faded out.
Yeah, it is faded, but there's a way to take care of that. This is a gorgeous mosaic, but the really important mosaic was actually found over there. And at the entrance to this mosque right here, a mosaic saying Shiloh, specifically Shiloh, was found here. And this is the biggest evidence that we have today that this is actually Shiloh. The mosaic that was here was in the Greek language, and it said, "Lord, may you have mercy over the residents of Shiloh." This was found here, it was taken, and today it's presented in the Good Samaritan Museum. Why Mosque of the Orphan? Probably the Church of the Orphan under that. Why the orphan? Well, we recall the story of Samuel that was raised here, that served in the Tabernacle of Eli in Shiloh. And we hear that there is a big battle between the Philistines and the Israelites. This battle is happening at the area of Even Ha'ezer, today the area of Rosh Ha'ain. And the Philistines are afraid at the beginning. They hear that the ark was brought to the battle, and they say, we're going to lose. The God of Israel is there. But the Israelites have one thing wrong. They don't understand that God's presence is dependent on their deeds and not on the physical presence of the ark. And what happens?
They take the ark off into the battle.
And they lose.
And they lose.
The Philistines actually win the battle. They take the Ark of the Covenant. They kill the two children of the high priest Eli. And they're actually starting to advance inward into the highlands and into Shiloh. And we read that there is a Benjaminite messenger that's running away from the battle, coming to Shiloh, going through the gates of the city, inside the city, telling the people what happened, the terrible news of fathers and brothers that were killed, that the Ark of the Covenant was taken, and they're screaming in the city, and Eli, the high priest, is listening and hearing those screams, but doesn't know why people are screaming. And then the Benjaminite messenger comes to the high priest, tells him the terrible news. Eli falls and dies, breaks his neck. And we read immediately after that that the wife of Phinehas, the son of Eli, needs to give birth after hearing the terrible news. And when her son is born, she calls him Ichabod. Ichabod means in Hebrew, the glory of God has deserted the people. It has left.
That's interesting because like we would never catch that in English, because in English you just read Ichabod, it sounds like some sort of like Dr. Seuss nursery rhyme or something like that. So it's amazing to see there's so much more depth in Hebrew.
The Hebrew, right. Ichabod means presence of God left the people of Israel. And so you're asking, why orphan? Why Mosque of the Orphan? Why the Church of the Orphan? The orphan is the son of Phinehas, the grandson of Eli, that lost both his grandfather and father on the same day.
Wow. So Ichabod was the orphan.
Correct. Let's go to the next spot where we think that the tabernacle might have stood, which is on the top of the ancient temple. We're at the bottom of the ancient tell. We're about to enter the city, the ancient city of Shiloh, through the gates. This is New Shiloh, the modern Jewish village of Shiloh that was built at the vicinity of ancient Shiloh. We're standing on the summit of this ancient tell, the city of Shiloh. And you can imagine the Benjaminite coming in through the gates of the city, just like we did, coming through the city, telling everyone, we lost the ark, we lost our fathers and our brothers. And the screams are coming out here in the city, the shouts of mourning. And so this is the city itself where we are right now, the center of the city. And it's believed by the Bible scholars that this might be the other option of where the tabernacle stood, which is in a high place where everybody can see it. It's in a high elevation, fit to a respectful place, a place of importance. You can also feel that it's windy because we're really on the top of this summit, of this peak. And so this place is the place that everybody can see. Just like that in Greece, you have the Acropolis, which is in a high place. And so it's thought that this might be the place of the tabernacle.
We saw the tabernacle model earlier. It seems like to me there's not really enough room for the whole courtyard and everything right here at this spot.
Right, that's one of the problems of this place. The other problem is actually the Benjaminite messenger that we spoke about. When he came into the city, we hear that people are shouting and are mourning the terrible news of what happened at the battlefield. But the only person that doesn't know why people are shouting, why they're mourning, is the high priest. If the tabernacle stood at the center of the city, Eli should have known immediately why people are shouting. But he's the last person in the story that knows why people are shouting, which means that Eli is not sitting at the center of the city. The tabernacle and Eli are sitting somewhere outside of the city or at the outskirts of the city. And so that's why this place has a very weak possibility of being the place of the tabernacle. But let's go to the next spot. We are going towards the northern part of the ancient tell. This is the outskirts. It's a place that is almost outside of the city. We're standing on a plateau that is to the north of the tell, which is right behind us. And most Bible scholars believe that the tabernacle stood on this plateau right here. Now, what is the evidence that we have that strengthens that this is the right location? So first of all, the Benjaminite, okay? We read that the Benjaminite goes through the city, through the gates of the city that we went through. He goes through the city and Eli hears what's happening at the city, but he doesn't know why people are screaming. The last place that the Benjaminite comes to is the place where the tabernacle stands, which is the farthest from the gates of the city. And this is that place. The other thing that is a big evidence of the tabernacle being here is the size of this plateau. We can see on both sides of this plateau a carved wall on both sides. If you measure the dimensions between these two sides, you see that they are the exact dimensions of the courtyard of the tabernacle. You can physically imagine the tabernacle here on this plateau with the exact size of the courtyard between these two walls. The third very important reason is the direction. The direction of this plateau is exactly to the degree east to west. And we know that the tabernacle in the desert was east to west. We know that the temple was east to west. So this also strengthens the idea that this might have been the plateau where the tabernacle stood. Another important archaeological evidence that we need to bring here is thousands of pieces of pottery that were found all around the mountains around us. And why? And this is very interesting because when people came and worshipped God at Shiloh, they didn't come to pray. They came here to sacrifice. And in order to eat the sacrifice, they had bowls of pottery. Now, the law in the oral Bible that we have, the oral traditions, is that you can only eat the sacrifice in a place where you can see both the tabernacle and the city that it's connected to. Now, after you've eaten the sacrifice, the bowl of pottery that you ate on is holy. You cannot take it home and use it for your mundane reasons. You have to break it. And so after eating, people would break the pottery, they would break the bowl at the place where they ate the sacrifice. The pieces of pottery around us are only at the place where you can see both this spot right here and the city. This is basically like a natural amphitheater around us watching this location where everything is happening. And so because of all of these reasons, it's believed that the tabernacle stood here. The place of the tabernacle has a lot of meaning in the Bible. When we read about Hannah coming here and praying to God, asking God to give her a child, we actually learn of a way to worship God. Today, praying is a common practice. At that time, when Hannah is praying, Eli sees her and thinks that she's drunk, because praying at that time was not a way of worshiping God. And so we learn about the power of prayer, the power of asking God for favor. And when Samuel is born and she comes back to the tabernacle with Samuel, she comes to Shiloh and she says a prayer of thanks to God. And this prayer of thanks, I believe, embeds two very important ideas. The first idea is the fact that God, the all-powerful God, the God that created the world, is not this divine presence that is far away, that doesn't have any connection to us humans, to what's happening on earth. But rather, God is the creator, but he also intervenes in our lives, in our day-to-day lives. And when we read Hannah's prayer, we see that she shows both ways of God's powers, the power of Genesis, the power of the creation, and also the power of his interference in history, and the interference in our lives, in our day-to-day lives. And for me, that's very, very encouraging. The other subject that comes up in her prayer of thankfulness to God is in the end. Hannah says, "And he will give strength unto his king, and exalt the horn of his anointed." There is also a prophecy in this glorification song. She prophesies that her son, Samuel, will crown the king, first King Saul and then King David. And this is a prophetic element that comes from the prayer, a very, very important issue. But this is not the only place where the Messiah, the anointed, the king, is mentioned. Do you remember where is the other place where it's mentioned?
In Genesis, it says, until Shiloh comes.
Right. There is a mysterious phrase in the book of Genesis, which is really hard for us to understand what it says. Jacob blesses his sons, and the blessing to the tribe of Judah is a very, very interesting one. "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, as long as he comes to Shiloh, and unto him shall the obedience of the peoples be." Interesting. Now, you don't find the word Shiloh in the English translation of most Bibles, yet when you read it in Hebrew, the word Shiloh, the name Shiloh appears, and you don't understand really what the phrase says, but you understand that Messiah is connected to Shiloh, that Messiah comes from Shiloh. Now you understand why you have such a high concentration of churches in this spot. This is a place that is not mentioned in the Christian tradition, in the Christian writings, the New Testament in any way, yet you find a lot of churches. And the reason for that is because Messiah appears in the song of Hannah. It appears in the blessing of Jacob to the tribe of Judah. This is a very important messianic place. Jew living today in this special time, when I see Hannah's prayer, I feel very, very privileged to live, because right now what we see is that for hundreds of years Jews have been praying hard to come back to this land from the exile. And so we're here, we're back here, and we're looking at the mountains around us, and we see the vines here, we see the Jewish villages here. This is something that God gave us for our prayers. We've prayed to come back here, and we came back here. We're here, we're planted in our land. And it's amazing. And also the fact that this is part of the days of Messiah. Just like Hannah mentions Messiah in her Song of Glorification. These are the times of Messiah. Messiah is coming soon. And this is why we're here. We're back in the land, because that's where everything's going to. And for me, this is very, very deep. This is very exciting. This is a very, very important and special place.
Thanks so much, Aaron, for making the Bible come alive and showing me this amazing site.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming. I invite you to come with Lipkin Tours to visit special sites that are off the beaten path, sites that are very, very important and are in the Bible, places where you can stand and feel God. I invite you to come to Samaria, Israel's biblical heartland, where prophecy was told and where prophecy is fulfilled.